Hello, everybody, and welcome to the House of Nostalgia. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, gave rise to what could be called the face performers era, a time when singers weren't always the stars you saw, and stars weren't always the voices that you heard. Now, the audiences had no idea. They were never supposed to know. The most infamous case was the pop duo Milli Vanilli, who skyrocketed to fame before collapsing in scandal. But the practice didn't begin with them. The blueprint had already been written back in the 1970s. In 1976, German producer Frank Farian created the disco group Boney M. Now on stage, Bobby Farrell became the group's frontman, a dancer full of energy and style. But behind the curtain, Farrell wasn't singing. The real male vocals were recorded in the studio by Farian himself. And for years, this was an open secret in the music world, but it didn't break into the mainstream until Milli Vanilli's scandal erupted more than a decade later. And the connection wasn't a coincidence because both groups, Boney M and Milli Vanilli, had been created by the same man, Frank Farian. Now, the exposure of Milli Vanilli destroyed their careers and had tragic consequences. Rob Pilatus, unable to cope with the shame and pressure, died in 1998 at only 32 years old. But this story doesn't end there, because at the very same time, another artist was fighting her own battle, not for fame, but for recognition. And her name is Martha Wash. Martha Wash is a powerhouse vocalist, beautiful, talented, and instantly recognizable to anyone in the music industry. Yet too often, her voice was used without her face, credit, or consent. Martha became tied to multiple legal battles over the misuse of her vocals. Two of those lawsuits would change the music industry forever, forcing labels to finally acknowledge the voices behind the hits. This is the story of Martha Wash. Martha Elaine Wash was born on December 28, 1953 in San Francisco, California. She grew up in a deeply religious household where her first stage was the church choir. It was here that she discovered her love for music, drawing inspiration from gospel legend Mahalia Jackson and soul powerhouse Aretha Franklin. By the time she reached high school, Martha's gift was undeniable. At San Francisco Polytechnic High School, she joined the school choir. And not only did they perform locally, they toured Europe for 2 weeks, giving Martha her first taste of an international stage. Over the course of those years, she even appeared on 4 choir albums, planting the seeds of what would become a remarkable career. Everything changed in 1976 when she auditioned to be a background singer for a rising star in the San Francisco disco scene, and his name is Sylvester. If you've seen my video on the history of disco, you'll remember Sylvester as one of the most flamboyant and trailblazing performers of that era. I'll leave a link of that video down below. Sylvester was immediately blown away by Martha's powerhouse vocals. He asked her if she knew anyone else who could sing with the same fire, and Martha brought in her friend Azora Rose. Now together, the two women became known as the 2 Tons of Fun. As Sylvester's background singers, they weren't just in the background. They became part of the heartbeat of his sound, touring the world, recording 4 albums with him, and lending their vocals to disco classics like You Make Me Feel, Mighty Real, and dance disco heat. The disco life had arrived, and Martha was at the center of it. In 1982, Martha Wash and Azora Rose finally stepped into the spotlight as a duo, calling themselves the Weather Girls. That same year, they released a song that would change everything, It's Raining Men. The track was bold, over the top, and bursting with joy, and it became an instant global hit with its campy energy and unforgettable vocals. It's Raining Men wasn't just another disco track, it became a cultural moment. The song quickly found a special place in the LGBTQ community, who embraced it as an anthem of freedom, fun, and unapologetic self-expression. And while some critics dismissed it as a novelty, the sheer vocal power of Martha and Azora made it undeniable. This wasn't just a catchy chorus. This was a showcase of two powerhouse voices at the height of their strength. Between 1982 and 1988, the Weather Girls recorded 5 albums together, carving out their place in the dance music history. Sadly, Azora Rose, Martha's partner in music and in life adventures, passed away in 2004. But the legacy that they built together, especially through It's Raining Men, remains timeless. In 1989, legendary producer David Cole, co-founder of CNC Music Factory, invited Martha to record a song titled You're My One and Only True Love. Cole was no small name. By this point, he had worked with stars like Mariah Carey, Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Whitney Houston, and many more. But what happened next was shocking. Instead of releasing the track under Martha's name, Cole gave it to a new group called Seduction. Martha's powerhouse vocals remained front and center on the record. She was the lead voice, but she was only credited as a background singer. To disguise her sound, her vocals were even remixed to make them less recognizable. The song became a hit, climbing to number 3 on the Billboard Dance Chart. Yet Martha wasn't in the music video, wasn't part of the group, and wasn't invited to perform the song she had carried with her voice. Feeling deceived and erased, Martha filed a lawsuit against A&R Records. The case was eventually settled out of court, making the first major battle in what would become a long fight for her voice and her name to be properly recognized. That same year, Martha was brought in as a session singer for the Italian dance group Black Box. She recorded nearly the entire Dreamland album, including 2 songs that would go on to become club classics, Everybody Everybody and Strike It Up. But instead of crediting her for her powerhouse performances, her vocals were passed off as someone else's. The group hired French model Catherine Quenal to appear in the music video, lip-syncing to Martha's voice, while the real singer remained hidden in the background. The deception worked, at least at first. Dreamland became a massive success, earning millions of dollars worldwide. But Martha, the true voice behind the music, was left out entirely. No credit, no royalties, and no recognition. In September of 1990, Martha Wash filed a lawsuit against RCA Records and Black Box for commercial appropriation. Just 3 months later, RCA settled the case out of court. The agreement was significant. Martha received a substantial financial settlement, was signed to an 8-album recording contract, and RCA even financed her national tour. Perhaps most importantly, the label was forced to reissue black box releases, this time with Martha's name finally listed in the credits. Meanwhile, Black Box continued to release singles from the Dreamland album throughout 1991. But by then, the truth was out. The powerhouse voice behind their biggest hits belonged to Martha Wash. In November of 1990, history repeated itself. The producers of CNC Music Factory, David Cole and Robert Clivels, had just created what would become one of the most iconic dance tracks of the decade. Gonna Make You Sweat, Everybody Dance Now. But behind the infectious hook, Everybody Dance Now, was the unmistakable powerhouse voice of Martha Wash. Instead of showcasing the woman who sang the song, the producers put forward a young model turned singer, Zelma Davis, to lip sync to the music video. Once again, Martha's voice was being used without proper credit, while someone else got the spotlight. At first, she reached out privately to the producers, but her request was ignored, so she took action. She filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court against Cole and Clivels and Sony Music Industry, accusing them of fraud, deceptive packaging, and commercial appropriation. The case dragged on until 1994, when it was finally settled, and the outcome was historic. For the first time, Sony was forced to make MTV add a disclaimer to the music video, crediting Martha Wash as the real vocalist and Zelma Davis as visualization. This was unprecedented. It was a public acknowledgement that the true voice behind the music had been hidden, all because the industry believed Martha didn't fit their so-called marketable image. Through her persistence, Martha not only reclaimed her voice, she exposed the exploitive practices of an entire era of pop and dance music. Despite everything she endured, Martha didn't stop. In fact, she thrived. After her lawsuits and public battles, she was officially invited to CNC Music Factory as a featured member. And in 1994, she proved once again why her voice was unstoppable with another #1 dance hit, Do You Wanna Get Funky? But Martha wasn't the only singer of that era whose voice was exploited. In 1990, legendary vocalist Jocelyn Brown faced a similar fate. The German dance group Snap built their powerhouse hit, The Power, around a sample of her voice. The unforgettable line, I've Got the Power, which came from Brown's 1986 track, Love's Gonna Get You. The sample was used without permission, sparking its own legal and industry debates. Martha became a symbol of a larger issue in the music industry. In my eyes, the erasing of women with huge, powerful vocals, whose voices built the foundation of modern dance and pop music. The industry was saying, we don't want you, we just need your voice, and we don't want to pay you either. They were trying to make this the norm. She stopped that. Now, I knew that was Martha's voice, but I had no idea what was going on. Martha Wash's life story is one of talent, struggle, and triumph. She started in gospel, became a disco queen, dance music queen, survived exploitation, fought the industry in court, and came out victorious, making sure that future generations of singers could never be erased the way they tried to do her. I would like to thank you all so much for watching this video on Miss Martha Wash.